Today I would like to talk about P.A.F pickups. What is it? Why do people love them so much? Why are they so haunted much? And why so many replicas appeared with these pickups? And how does it all work in general? If you have not subscribed to this channel yet, then please do. Ring the bell, leave your likes and comments below. And let me remind you that I also have a Patreon page where you can support my workshop by subscribing, and you will find a lot of interesting and useful information on painting, guitar relicking, and much more. So the link is in description and here. And now let's talk about the pickups. Let's go. Since 1952, Gibson has used single-coil P90 pickups in their guitars. It was a single that basically sounded good, but like any singles, it was quite noisy. And in 1955, Sad Lover came up with this innovative pickup with two coils, the task of which is to dampen the noise of one bobbin with the noise of the other. That is, noise and noise is superimposed and subtracted. This is the effect of a humbucker. And in 1952, on June 22nd, he filed an application with the patent office, and from that moment the Gibson company marked all its pickups with such a sticker, where it was written "Patent Applied For." A patent application was filed. From these words came the abbreviation, which gave the name for this P.A.F pickup. The subsequent history of these pickups is also very rapidly unfolding. Some improvement has already gone on. They began to introduce some innovations, a slightly different wire, slightly different bobbins, slightly different magnets, and further pickups starting from 1964 are already properly called T-top, because on the bobbins themselves from above they had such small icons in the form of the letter T and some other squiggles. Type on the top the letter T, T-top. These are also very cool pickups. They're very valued, but they're not as legendary as P.A.F pickups. There are many T-tops and few P.A.Fs. That's why musicians and collectors love them so much, especially since very famous musicians began to popularize this very model of P.A.F from the very beginning. And this sound was deposited in the memory, and now everyone is looking for this very voice of the P.A.F pickup. The thing is that the early versions before 1964 were very different. This largely depended on production methods, as the P.A.F pickup was based on the P90 pickup. And even for the first prototype of the P.A.F pickup, P90 bobbins were taken. The extra ones were cut off a little so that they fit into this form factor. And these were two P90 bobbins. Therefore, the machines on which the P90 was wound remained the same. They were very simple and often made almost handicraft from planks, the wooden ones. They had a turn counter, but they didn't automatically stop. Therefore, the operator had to manually stop the machine when there were enough turns on the bobbin, by eye. They determined it. It seemed to be full and they stopped it. Therefore, each bobbin of the early P.A.F pickups had a different number of turns. Plus, there were also different tension of the wire. And since we have a wire with a fairly thin animal and very thin itself, the slightest over-tension of the wire by such a number of turns, and this is 5,000, approximately, led to a thinning of the wire. Accordingly, more turns could fit on the bobbin if the wire is over-tightened, and that's exactly why we have completely different coil resistance indicators. Somewhere the pickups can be 7 k-ohm and somewhere 9. That is, although visually the number of turns is the same, but by the resistance we understand that the number of turns is bigger here. By the shape of the bobbin, which is slightly curved, we can determine that the wire is over-tightened. And already by this factor, I can say that this pickup will sound muddier or with a narrower frequency. All these manipulations with the wire have a very big impact on the overall picture. In the 1964, when they began to produce T-top pickups, when production was already set straight so that the machines had an automatic stop, several bobbins were wound at once and the quality was more controlled. The quality of the pickups became the same. They got better, but correspondingly had a slightly different sound. I would not say that they are worse. I really like these T-tops, but it is P.A.F pickups. Since there are few of them in comparison with T-tops, they are valued more by collectors. And Job in Massachusetts loves these pickups. It's always a pig in a poke, but it's very interesting, especially given the fact that these original pickups, they cost. And this encourages collectors to hunt even more by investing in such vintage parts. Okay, pickups with a patent applied for a sticker were installed in serial Gibson models from 1957 to 1961. After the patent was received, the sticker was changed to the patent number on T-tops pickups too until 1972, I think. There was still a sticker with a patent number. Then they began to apply the patent number on the backplate with an imprint. And now collectors have such an interesting game. Find a P.A.F pickup cheaply. Usually, such people go to flea markets. Well, used to go. Now this is already known to many, so there is no such freebie. And they were looking for pickups with a patent number. It is almost impossible to distinguish a P.A.F pickup from the outside. But when we remove the cap, we can see the bobbins. If they do not have the letter T, it means the P.A.F pickup. Just a sticker with a patent number has already peeled off. It was an interesting lottery. In the 1950s, Anlico magnets began to be used. It is an alloy of aluminum, nickel, and cobalt that held a magnetic charge for a long time. And these were very popular magnets. They constantly experimented with different alloys. So the alloy is called Anlico 2, Anlico 3, Anlico 4, Anlico 5, Anlico 6, 7, and 8. And in the 50s, they mainly used Anlico 2, Anlico 4, sometimes Anlico 3 alloy was used. And in the 1960s, they began to use Anlico 5. In my opinion, this is the most interesting alloy. And it is very similar to Anlico 4. Anlico 4, it's kind of transitional stage to Anlico 5. These two types of magnets sound the best. Well, it's all a matter of taste and very individual, because someone likes Anlico 2, which has great dynamics. Some people like Anlico 4 or 5, which has more compression and it is much easier to play. is so very individual. I like both, depending on the situation and the mood. It is customary to use magnets in P.A.F. that were not polished and are long. Now they simply use a cut, polished magnet. Well, as polished, it's grinded. They're quite short. And in the 50s, they used those magnets that were installed in the P90. In the P90, there were two magnets. And the same magnets, in order to save money, began to be used one for two coils. They immediately put it not around the screws as in P90, but in the middle, between screws of two coils. Well, imagine, you just need half of the magnets for production. And in 1961, they started using polished magnets. And in 64, in T-tops, the magnets became shorter. Backplate. The backplate is traditionally made of nickel silver. It is very similar to silver. It was used in jewelry and cutlery. It has very good conductive characteristics. So they started making the backplate and pickup covers from this material. The cover, it just does have such a shielding effect to additionally dampen all sorts of noise from the pickup. The pickup bobbins were made from cab material, cellulose acetate butyrate. So this material is quite soft and has a very important role in shaping the sound of the bobbin itself, because the wire that is wound on this material, it filters sound waves that come in from the outside and transmit them to the wire. And the wire vibrates inside and produces this microphone effect. These sound waves that come from the outside are a very important aspect in the formation of sound. In the 1980s, when the music moved to a stronger gain, and those features of the P.A.F. pickups, which made them very musical, very open and clean, started to interfere with this gain. And then they began to make pickups a little differently. They were modified so that they did not ring, did not buzz on stage with a large sound and a large gain. Started with the fact that they began to paraffin them to get rid of the microphone effect. And the microphone effect of the P.A.F. pickup is one of the most important things, the most important principles of the sound formation. It is basically holds this beautiful punch of the pickup, the attack, these amazing noises and amazing sensitivity, when the pickup not only works inductively but also as a microphone. Many will say, what did you find there? What did you see there? What did you hear? But the mic effect is very easy to hear. I suggest you watch a little piece that I recorded not so long ago in the studio, and you will see what the microphone effect is and how it works. And now we have arrived at the studio and will conduct an experiment with this P.A.F. pickup according to the vintage scheme of a copy of the 59th pickup with exactly the same microphone effect. Here we have a vintage 1963 Fender Princeton amp here, and we have a silent box here in which we will put our amp. And I already soldered some wire to this pickup, at the end of which there is a jack, and straight into the amplifier. And in theory, what I say into this pickup, you will hear in your headphones. Okay, and we will record the sound simply with the zoom.
One, two, check, check, 1, 2. Introducing the P.A.F. microphone effect. Я думаю,
I think this is a good visual demonstration of the microphone effect of P.A.F pickups. Let's continue.
Of course, on high gain, such a microphone effect is a minus. So, the pickup began to be immersed in molten paraffin to drown out the resonance of the wire winding and the rattle of the cover. The microphone effect is gone, but at the same time, a lot of great, tasty overtones are gone. The frequency is slightly narrowed, the pickup has become flatter. But in principle, this is a plus for high gain. What they started to do next was to narrow the frequency range even more, winding hotter pickups with thinner wire, where much more turns can be placed on the coil, and accordingly, the pickup resistance will increase. For example, let's say 14K ohm per pickup. But what does it give? The pickup does not get louder. The pickup becomes narrower in frequency range. Thus, with high gain, we can remove all unnecessary waves, cut off the boom in basses, the noisy top, and leave only the middle frequency, which in principle works with overloaded tubes, with an overloaded amplifier. It's precisely this middle that amplifiers show as a rule. Such pickups, when playing on a clean sound, leave much to be desired. They simply don't sound. It's a buzz in the neck and some fart in the bridge, although there is this meat on the high gain. I really like clean, open P.A.F pickups, as I mostly play on a clean sound, or with a light crunch. And on light crunch, these minuses of the microphone effect are basically not noticeable at all. I like it when I hear the sound of the guitar wood, the sound of fingers rustling on the strings. These are all the small nuances that are like a whisper in your ear. That's all there is in this pickup. And P.A.F pickups show you just that. Therefore, it is these pickups that people replicate. Tim Shaw was the first to replicate the P.A.F. He was at Gibson. He decided that everyone was tired of the T-top. It was necessary to return to the roots and make a P.A.F. He came up with a model, or rather not came up with it, but recreated the P.A.F. in the Burstbacker model. But also other people from small workshops began to replicate and began to investigate initially this phenomenon of P.A.F. pickups. And one of the first was, and is, Dave Stevens. Awesome pickups, awesome approach. I learned a lot from him, namely the approach to this matter. He was probably the first to explore the alloy of metals and the possibility of repeating such a pickup in the most subtle details in our realities with modern production. Because the alloys have changed, the production has changed, some metals can no longer be mined. And this man, Dave, he still replicates, still makes pickups today. And not just pickups. He got to ABR1 bridges. A lot of people make pickup replicas, good sounding replicas. You can buy them, but let's say I have ants in my pants. I can't just find everything and buy it. I need to research and try to do it myself. So those ants began to itch. And as a result, a few years ago I purchased a simple pickup winder from Magidon. That's a good machine, simple, inexpensive, has a lot of advantages. All this is good. But only this machine was originally intended out of the box for manual winding of singles. So there was a very primitive cartridge where the bobbin is inserted, and it was necessary to lay out the coils manually. I have modernized this machine for a very long time and deeply. And on the basis of this machine, I have already got a specific, good, and adequate machine for winding P.A.F pickups in exact way. I don't wind anything else on it. Now an automatic spreader is installed there with the same coil layout matrix as on vintage machines. There are already two wire tensioners that control the exact tension of the wire, so that it does not stretch more than it needs to. And it is possible to wind two coils at once. This machine is perfect for me. It is very mobile. It can be dismantled, assembled elsewhere. So if I run away from my country, then this is the first thing I will take with me. Well, except for a passport, wife, children, and a dog. I had a short video on how to wind pickups. You can see it here. Brush it up a bit in your memory. And the link will be in the description too. Well, everything is pretty clear there. Everything told in great detail. For the first few years, for some reason, I could not achieve that very recognizable voice that we can very clearly hear in these pickups. I could not recreate it. I could not understand why, until the moment when the original P.A.F fell into my hands. I ventured to take this expensive, very expensive pickup apart and check the size of all its parts. Accordingly, my friend and I also did an analysis of vintage alloys. Modern alloys are not suitable at all. They have a different composition, different proportions of metals, and even from standard alloys, it is impossible to pick up even close an alloy that would fit the vintage one. Vintage alloys often have more nickel and less copper, and even the nickel plating was without a copper layer, which almost no one does now. And, haha, guys, if you think that you can buy everything on this site, let's say StewMac or Mojiton or in some other web pages, replicas of vintage P.A.F bobbins, the replicas of backplates, some other parts that correspond to the size of a P.A.F, collect it all and wind it up with a modern wire, and you would get that sound? No shit. It's not gonna work. No way. Because you need to understand that every part has its own influence. When all together, all these factors come together and they are all correct and can not only complement each other, but also correct. If we allow the wrong alloy to be used somewhere, then we can compensate for this with something else. So, if we have a vintage wire, then it will sound different. If we take a modern wire in copper, which has more impurities than in the old copper, we need to compensate for this with something. And we make up for it in different ways. It's the same process of tuning as you would do in the amplifier. But the main point is that now, no manufacturer produces exact replica parts. It's impossible to find exact replicas. Why is it done? Because lately, well, not even lately, but in all the years, people have always made fakes, just to sell them for a higher price. I met a lot of Les Pauls, and people told me that this is 1958 or this is 1960 Les Paul, and they show me the pictures, and it turns out to be the fake. In appearance, yeah. From the first glance, yeah, it's a vintage Les Paul, but that's a fake. And so that this does not happen, so that these replica parts are not passed off as the original, because the original part is very expensive, even just for a collector or a musician who wants to replace a broken part. Let's say my cover broke and I want to replace it with the original one. But I can buy a replica. But I will have to state that this is a replica in this part. I can't say this is original, because no matter how exactly it looks, there are small markers that it is not the original one. And it's with all the details that can be bought on the market. And the same things happens with P.A.F. bobbins. Not a single bobbin that can be bought on the market now has the correct dimensions. Accordingly, we cannot get the sound, the correct voice of the P.A.F. under any circumstances. The mass of the wire that fits between the two walls of the bobbin is crucial in the formation of the resonant frequency. And if this resonant frequency is not in the right place, we hear a completely different tone of the pickup. It can sound good, can be bright, beautiful, but it will not have the P.A.F. voice. The only solution I've found to this problem is to start making my own replica bobbins. The first batch of my wonderful bobbins is ready, with a wonderful right P.A.F. voice. In the end, we can get exactly a clone of a specific sound, a specific P.A.F. pickup. In this case, I'm replicating specific instances. Let's say I got the 1957. I'm replicating it precisely in its form factor, with its tension, with its sonic characteristics. If you get 1959, there are some other differences, let's say a different magnet, a different tension, and accordingly a different sound. But every single one has the same voice. You can listen to how they sound in the video using the links in the description. And yeah, I have several clone models of P.A.F. pickups. This is 1958 clone, 1959 clone. Model Goldie is one of my favorite models. And this is a top seller because people really like the sound of this particular pickup. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, then please do and ring the bell. Hit the like button, leave your comments, and go to my Patreon and subscribe. Support me and my workshop, because in this difficult time, this is actually the only way to survive. I'm only doing the guitar building right now. I'm only doing guitar building right now. All my art projects are now on hold. That's why I spend more time on P.A.F. pickups and guitars. And soon, several of my 1959 Les Paul clones will finally appear in my workshop. They will be painting, they will be relicking, while I'm working on a few more projects from Valery Vashenko and repainting my Stephanie Burst Les Paul. Write your questions in the comments. We will cover my P.A.F. pickup clones in the next video. So, see you soon.
Rock and roll for all.